I'm not a saint, and this is no ordinary story. It is the raw and sincere story of a woman who had everything and shattered it with a single gesture, a desire, a thrill, a mistake. This is my story of passion, of regret, and maybe of a second chance. Sign up if you want to find out how dangerous desire can become. My name is Francesca. I am 35 years old, and until recently I thought I had it all. An orderly life, a present husband, a house that smelled of security. Matteo. He was the right man, kind, thoughtful, with those eyes that could calm me down even on the worst days. We shared 12 years of marriage, 12 years that seemed carved in stone, indestructible, or at least that's what I thought. Then I made a mistake that uprooted every certainty. I betrayed Matteo, and in the grip of a confusion that crushed my soul, I let everything go. We divorced, and since that day, every single morning I wake up with the feeling of having blown up my very existence. I wish I could go back, reach into time and tear that moment away, but I can't. And now I have only one burning desire left, to have him back by my side. I would like to tell him what I felt, explain how the void swallowed me, and maybe, just maybe, find the courage to make amends. But before I can even hope to be heard, I have to go back there, to the moment when everything began to crumble. When I met Matteo, I was a girl full of dreams. He had bewitched me with his calm, with that silent but profound way of loving me. It wasn't just physical attraction. It was a deep, almost visceral bond. We built our refuge together, dinners with friends, movies hugged on the sofa, that simple complicity that gave meaning to everything. But then, something cracked, slowly, without making a sound. I couldn't say if it was routine, monotony, or simply time that began to crumble the foundations. A sense of emptiness was born inside me, insidious, invisible, but present, stronger, every day. I tried to ignore him, to make do with what we had. Matteo was always the same, present, affectionate, busy in his own way. But I was starting to feel transparent, and then he arrived. Philip, a colleague, nothing special apparently, but he had that energy that gets inside you, ironic, engaging, with that lightness that makes you feel like you're back vista. We worked together more and more, and at first it was just that, work. But then, the late texts, the coffee breaks that became too long, the glances that lasted a moment too long, and that thrill I hadn't felt in years. With him, I felt alive, desired, and every time he made me laugh, I felt a part of me awaken, a part that I had buried under routine, under the habits of a marriage that now felt too tight. Matthew didn't notice. He was tired, distracted, and instead of screaming to get noticed, I let Filippo get closer, slowly, like a caress that slides over your skin and stops right there, where you feel the need to be touched. One evening, after a long day and a few too many drinks, it happened. It wasn't unbridled passion. Number. It was something more subtle, a need, an impulse, a moment of weakness in which I chose to cross the line, and immediately after came the regret. But it was too late. From that moment, everything fell apart. I couldn't look Matteo in the eyes. Every kindness was a blow to the heart. Every word was a silent stab that reminded me how much I had become a stranger, even to myself. And then, the truth came out. Matteo found messages that should never have existed. And he didn't yell. He didn't accuse me. He didn't make a scene. His silence was devastating. I saw everything in his eyes, the disappointment, the sadness, that deep pain of someone who feels betrayed not only in their body, but in their soul. And that's where I lost it. And since then, every night, when I lie alone in a bed that's too cold, I relive every moment, every mistake, every wrong choice. I wonder if there's still a chance, if somewhere deep down, Matteo can still feel the pulse of what we were. But maybe it's just a deserved punishment. Maybe some wounds don't heal. They stay there to remind you that love, when you betray it, is never the same again. Shortly after, we decided to separate, a decision made in a hurry, almost suddenly, without even being able to look each other in the eyes and really face what had happened. Maybe because we were both too hurt, or maybe because I didn't have the courage to admit how much I had been the one who destroyed everything. The divorce was silent, with no legal arguments or courtroom drama, just the brutal end of what we had built together, piece by piece. And it was right there, in the void that remained, that my true torment began. The first months without Matteo were a long agony. I tried to convince myself that it was the right choice, that time would heal everything, that a new life, perhaps more serene, would come. But every time something reminded me of him, a song, a photo forgotten at the bottom of a drawer, the pain exploded inside me like a sudden pang. I tried to distract myself, to go out, to pretend, other men, other hands, other bodies, but nothing could fill that deep void that only he knew how to fill. No one made me vibrate in the same way. No one made me feel alive, desired, complicitly lost like Matteo. And it was then that I realized with disarming clarity that I truly loved him, that with him my life had a meaning, a direction, a shape. Without him, everything seemed faded. The need to see him again became a silent obsession. I didn't know if he would ever forgive me, but I couldn't bear the weight of regret any longer. So, one day, I took courage and called him. My heart pounded as I listened to the insistent sound of the phone ringing. Each ring was a shock. I wondered if he would answer, or worse, ignore my call. If something in you has moved by hearing this story, then stay. Press sign up and let yourself be tempted again, one story at a time. When his voice finally rang out, I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was him, but he wasn't the same. His voice, once so warm and familiar, now sounded cold, distant. He greeted me with a neutral, almost annoyed tone, and I was there, without a prepared speech, naked of words and charged only with emotions. I asked him to speak, to listen to me, to give me even just a moment to explain, to ask for forgiveness. He was silent. The silence seemed eternal. Then he spoke, and his words were like blades. He told me that he couldn't forget the pain, that the betrayal, the divorce, everything had been a disaster. Hearing him say it, in that rough voice, was like receiving a sudden slap. I already knew how much I had hurt him, but hearing it from him was devastating. And yet, I didn't stop. I confessed to him how much I missed him, how much I missed his smell on my skin, his breath on the back of my neck, his eyes looking at me as if I were the only woman in the world. I told him that I was willing to do anything, even grovel on my mistakes, if only there was even a small chance of us returning. More silence. Then he told me he couldn't give me an answer, that it wasn't that easy to forget, that he needed time. I agreed. What else could I do? I was empty, hurt, but at least I had taken the first step. I had opened a crack, and even though my heart was screaming inside me, I decided to wait. The days passed slowly. Every hour seemed endless. I continued my life, at least apparently, but in every free moment, in the silence of the house, in the night dreams, there he was, Matteo, and that fixed thought, what could I have done to not lose him? Then it happened. His name appeared on the screen. My heart began to pound. I was shaking, not knowing if he was about to close everything or if he was about to reopen a possibility. When I answered, his voice was different, less hard, full, yes, of emotions that I could not yet decipher, but at least it was no longer made of ice. He told me that he had thought about everything I had said, and that he wanted to see me. He wanted to see me, in person. My heart tightened and expanded at the same time. Was it a good sign, or just the kindest way to close all hope? I didn't know, but I accepted immediately, in a thread of voice, trying not to let the anxiety that was eating me alive show. We would have dinner at our usual restaurant, the one for special occasions. Just the name of the place took me back to when a look was enough to light us up, when we made love before even touching each other. And that night, I was ready for anything, even to be destroyed again, just to have one last chance to feel like he was hers again. That night I didn't sleep a wink. My thoughts chased each other, pressing, in a debilitating dance between hope and fear. 1,000 scenarios opened up before me, and none of them seemed reassuring. When the day of the meeting finally arrived, my heart was beating, as if it had its own rhythm. I prepared myself carefully, not to seduce him, but to feel strong, confident, to remind myself that I was still a woman capable of loving and of desiring. I wanted to be there in front of him, with all of myself, without masks. I entered the restaurant with my heart in my throat. Matteo was already there, sitting at our table, the one next to the window where we had celebrated so many important milestones in our life together. His eyes rose to me, and for a moment I felt my legs give out. There was something new in that look. It was always him. But there was a distance, a filter that had never been there before. I approached slowly. When he rose to welcome me, my body felt his heat a few inches away, and it was a subtle, almost painful shiver. We sat down opposite each other. The water arrived at the table immediately, but neither of us seemed interested in the menu. The words were slow to arrive, held back by a mixture of modesty, anger, and melancholy. Then Matteo spoke. He told me that in those months he had thought about everything, trying to understand why I betrayed him, why we ended. I had asked myself those questions 1,000 times, and now it was time to say them out loud. I felt small, naked, and yet I had to do it. I told him about the emptiness that had crept inside me while everything on the surface seemed perfect. A subtle but constant lack, a physical and mental need that I had ignored for too long. Our intimacy had become habit. The caresses had become automatic gestures. And instead of facing it, instead of fighting for us, I had looked for stimulation elsewhere. I had allowed myself to be seduced by something that seemed to fill me, but in the end had only emptied me. Matteo listened, and I could almost hear him steeling himself not to react. His silence was heavy, but necessary. I told him that in those months, far from him, I had understood everything, that no one had ever made me feel as alive as he did. No one knew how to read my silences, ignite my desires, as he knew how to do. And yes, I had cheated, but I had never stopped loving him. I confessed to him that I was ready for anything, to make amends, to suffer, to deserve every step towards a possible return, even if the trust was broken, even if he didn't know if he could forgive me. Matteo did not remain impassive. In his eyes, I saw a veil of emotion, a thin trace of what we had been. He said that a part of him still loved me, that the desire was not dead, but was buried under the fracture I had created. He couldn't promise me anything, but he said that maybe we could take it slow. Those words were like a crack in the wall. It wasn't a return, but it wasn't a goodbye either, and I knew I had to hold on to that crack of light. Over the next few days, we started to talk. Nothing intense or overwhelming, just little texts, short but meaningful phone calls. It was his way of giving me space to see if I had really changed. Every word was a test, every silence a test. After a few weeks, he suggested we meet again, at the same restaurant. That evening, the air was different, softer, lighter. There was no longer that tense thread ready to break. We talked about everything, as if we wanted to find a rhythm that we had missed. Work, life, small shared memories. And in the midst of everything, there was also the unsaid, that subtle tension that, despite everything, continued to exist. I felt something moving, slowly, but it was moving. His eyes had regained some of that light I knew, and for a moment, it almost seemed like I was going back to when his touch was enough to light me up. When we said goodbye, Matteo looked at me with an intense expression. He said he didn't know where all this would lead, but he wanted to give me a chance. He couldn't erase the past, but he could choose to look forward. My heart exploded with joy, but I remained calm. It was only the beginning. I knew it would be a long road, full of twists and turns and doubts. But I didn't care, because we were choosing to walk it together. And now that I understood what I risked losing, I wouldn't have given up. Because true love, the kind that overwhelms you, excites you, and tears you apart, always deserves a second chance. If you want to receive new videos of the series, write, "I want the sequel," in the comments. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to receive previews of the next publications. Thanks.